right. So what we're going to go over tonight, we are going to talk about learning sportsmanship. And there he is.
Sorry, computer crashed.
Oh, no worries. So today we're going to talk about learning sportsmanship, how we can better teach it as coaches, as parents, and just go into it a little bit. And the reason this came up for me this week, I don't know if you guys had a chance. I mentioned this in an article that we wrote this week, the Clemson-Louisville game. And there was a defensive player. Wow, coach is crashing stuff.
Hold on a second. Yep.
You're good. We had there was a play in that game where the linebacker from Clemson late on a play made a tackle of the quarterback, Lamar Jackson, from Louisville. And in the pile, you could see he had him around the shoulder, but then he really pulled it right around his throat. And then while in the pile, pulled him over the pile in a chokehold. And, at first you see Lamar Jackson go crazy, and you're like, oh, my gosh, what was that? And then when you see the replay of what actually happened, you can understand why he was so upset. Because it really was a pretty dirty play, and I thought it was a little bit above and beyond in the moment there. And I know he said he thought he was, still up, that he wasn't down yet. I'm not buying that one. I don't think that was the case on that play, and I didn't like it. And it's something I'm sure coaches dealt with that too. You have guys that do things in the middle of a pile or the bottom of a pile, turn a foot, do things that are dirty. And in my opinion, there's no room in the game for it. I don't think there is. Any kind of cheap shot like that is, to me, is unexcusable. And then I don't know if you guys watched the Monday Night Football game last night, but you had Odell Beckham Jr., who had some problems last week on the sideline, controlling his emotions. And, last week it didn't affect his team. And last night it did. And, I really think it comes down to a couple things. And the main one being respect for others. Okay. And being able to kind of flip that switch and still have respect for others. And that's something that we kind of talked about this week. So, in both cases, I think there, you've got some, those are grown men, and Odell Beckham, in these college kids. I mean, they've been around a while. They should know how to act. And again, Coach and I have both talked about this being an emotional game, but we need to start at a young age explaining and teaching our kids to understand that that's not a reason for unacceptable behavior. And really that stuff all carries over into other parts of your life. And that's kind of what I wanted to discuss tonight. So, Coach, is there anything you want to add before we move on?
Well, I apologize. I didn't get a chance to read your entire article, but I do know that it's the game of football teaches us to be violent. It teaches us to go above and beyond physically than we can ever thought that we did. And we do things that, you can't do on the street. You can't walk down the street and do some of the drills or some of the things that we do to other people while you're in the game. So it's definitely something that teaches you violence and getting after it. The problem is trying to teach people, and it helps if it's done at an early age of teaching people how to flip the switch. And basically by that I mean is you can flip the switch to being very aggressive, and then you can flip it back and saying, okay, I'm not on the field anymore. What we're seeing with some of these guys is that the way they've been raised or the way they've been brought up is the violence that they have and the attitudes that they have carry over all the time. It's like there were guys when I played that were definitely marked guys. I mean, I remember sitting in the film room, and we would watch guys, and we would see them do dirty plays, and every single one of us would say, "Okay, remember 76. We're going after him. Any chance you get, you hit him. You do whatever you have to do." And those guys, believe it or not, they really don't play near as long as the guys that play the game with sportsmanship and with good conduct. You don't have to be dirty. You don't have to be cheap. Sometimes you're going to go beyond the whistle, and that's understandable. We saw that Wisconsin LSU situation, and I don't know if that guy really intentionally did it or not. I wasn't there. You don't know. We weren't inside his head. However, the one that you mentioned, I did see that. And in my opinion, that was definitely a dirty, unsportsmanlike act. And, he's going to be marked. I mean, for the rest of this year, for sure. And probably in the future, they're going to say, get after him whenever you can. And I think there's two ways to go. And we just had this issue in the team I'm coaching. And, there's the taking the high road, respecting your opponent, respecting your teammates, respecting other people. And then there's the low road, which is win at all cost, be dirty, play nasty, don't try and pick people up, but try and put them down. And it's kind of the bully mentality. And I think that's where I see, sportsmanship to me is taking the high road, building everybody else up around you, making yourself, even though they're getting built up, making yourself better. And I think that's, for me, what sportsmanship is.
Yeah, I agree. And I really think that, I'm very much a firm believer in you can be as aggressive as you need to be to play this sport at the absolute highest level and not do the kinds of things that we see some of these guys do, because there's really just no reason for it. And a lot of times, I think it keeps some guys from being those upper echelon players because they aren't respected. And when you're not respected, you get fewer opportunities. You're not going to be thought of well by others, your peers, the guys you play with even aren't going to respect that. It might be, you might think it's cool once, you might think it's funny when something like that happens, but when you get a guy that's doing that over and over again, that's not the case. You get sick of it. It wears you down. It's bad for your team. It's a cancer, because those guys eventually do things that are detrimental to your team. And you saw that last night with Odell Beckham Jr., that's a guy that plays with a lot of emotion. Obviously, we saw that last week. He hit himself in the face with with kicking that. I mean, it's just dumb things, right? But, that last week it didn't hurt his team because he's doing stupid things on the sideline. Nobody really cares. But when you start doing things that give you unsportsmanlike conduct penalties in a game, it backs you up 15 yards when you got a drive going, and it causes you to punt at a critical time in the game. I would say that his penalty last night may have cost them the entire game, because they actually made a couple of plays right there that had them moving, and he stalled their drive, and then the Vikings got the ball and scored right away. And it just put them behind, and they didn't recover from it. So, there's one thing about, the integrity of the game and respect for the game. There's a second part of that, and it is when it affects your team, when you do things that actually affect the outcome of a game negatively by the stupid stuff you're doing in a game. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, and so, it really a lot of it too, Steve, I think is, it's what we've learned. And, I see, Kim, you wrote down that you're seeing that at the age level. And that's my point. I had a coach that I heard tell me that he used to grab guys in the cojones in the piles. And I looked at him, I said, seriously, that you really? And he goes, oh, absolutely. We did whatever. And I'm like, you know what? Why would you need to do that? I mean, seriously, what is it, and all I can think of is they couldn't play it the right way, so they had to try and cheat and do all that. Well, it really comes down to what were they taught? Who was teaching them that that's an okay procedure to do? So all these guys that are doing this are getting taught by whether it's their father, whether it's their uncle, whether it's a coach, and I see these young kids getting screamed at by adults with ridiculous behavior. And what are those kids learning? They're learning ridiculous behavior. And unless some coach can come in or some parent can come in and say, wait a minute, this is not acceptable and this is not the way the game needs to be played, they're going to continue to do it. And they continue it all the way up into the NFL. And it's sad to see that happen. But, one of the things that, Steve and I are trying to do is really trying and get the word out to all of our linemen and all the people that we coach and work with, that there's a better way. There's the way that you can play this game and take it into life and learn these life skills so that you're not an ass, or you're not a dirty player, or you're not someone that's trying to cheat, steal, or lie your way through life. You can do it the right way.
Yeah. Well, and I can think of two things. When we played the year we went to the Rose Bowl, we played Michigan State in Japan. And they had two players on their defensive line that were just absolute jerks. I mean, they were punching, they were grabbing you, they were doing different things. And unfortunately for them, it had the opposite effect of what they were trying to do. They were trying to intimidate us. And instead, one of those guys ended up out of the game, probably with a concussion, because he got steamrolled 3 or 4 times with double teams. And, it had the opposite effect, and we ended up just crushing that team.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, their own guys. We got a chance to hang out with the offensive linemen from that team because, we're the only Americans over there the night of the game. And we went out after the game, and their offensive linemen didn't even like them. They didn't respect them a bit. Mm-hmm. And they weren't that good. And they weren't that good because that's all they could do. That's the only way they could play. And it had the, it might work with somebody that is easily intimidated, which at that level, it's pretty rare that you get guys that are easily intimidated, right?
Right.
And it just had the opposite effect, and they just got their butts kicked. And then there was another one, and I mentioned this in the video in the article, but I had a parent. I was at a game, and I was at a game, and it was a basketball game, and there was a kid who stole the ball from one team, got a breakaway, went up for a layup, and one of the kids on the other team came in and just hammered him. And the kid, just blatant foul. And they ended up getting the intentional foul and the 2 shots, but the kid stayed down for a good 5 minutes. And I don't know, it hurt their shoulder and smacked their head on the floor. Well, the parent of that kid that fouled was sitting up behind me, and this parent stands up and starts whooping and it's a great foul. That was a great foul, and I'm like, and clapping, he's the only person in the entire gym that's making a noise, and I'm like, what is that person thinking? And the thing I saw right after it happened was that kid that made the foul, that fouled hard, got up, turned around, and you could see a smirk on their face. And I'm like, yep, well, that's the reason right there. Yep. There's the reason that kid's acting like that, and it was unconscionable. And I had to really bite my tongue because I wanted to turn around and just and say something to the guy. And he was a little too far away from me. But, it's just it goes to the first thing I talked about in the article. And that was to give, it was the second thing. But the first one was give constant reminders of what acceptable behavior is. As coaches, as parents, we want to lift up the things that we see kids doing well in a game, in practice, in life, in general. When kids are doing the right thing, we want to make sure we make a big deal out of it. We want them to know that is the kind of behavior that we want. Are they helping other guys up? Are they giving the ball to the ref? Are they, how do they handle themselves when they score or make a big play? Are they taunting? Are they showing kids up? Obviously, that's not acceptable behavior, and we need to point that out as well. And I hate seeing coaches that leave kids in after they have a personal foul and don't at least bring them over to the sideline and explain, this is what you did wrong. We did that with kids in all the years that I coached high school football. If I had a kid that got any kind of personal foul, or an unsportsmanlike conduct, even if it was something that was the kid just went too long after the whistle, I would still take him out of the game and say, listen, this is what happened. This is why you did it. Okay. And then I would put him back in the next play. A kid that did something where he threw a punch or hit somebody, I generally take those kids out for the rest of the game. See ya. You're going to sit. We're going to talk about it. But, there's no room for it in the game. And you're going to cause more problems by being in there. But I see guys that leave kids in there and don't even explain to them what they did wrong. And I think that's a mistake too. So I think we really want to point out behaviors.
One of the things that's really cool that I've learned and watched is you can really, when you give a kid positive praise, not like just boosting up his ego, but just saying, hey, this is really cool how you handled that situation. And you can watch the demeanor of the kid, and you can see him rise, and you can see him feel good and grow up. When you see a coach scream and yell or holler or belittle or put down, you can see them deflate, and then you see the anger come out. And I think a lot of times when you see the kids that are doing those on sport, they're angry. They're really angry at something that someone said. Like you said, the one guy with the smirk on his face, I can guarantee if you really sat down and talked to him, he didn't feel good about what he did, but that was how he reacted because he got the attention from his dad when he looked up at him. Yeah. And it's really, I think, important as parents, coaches, players to watch how you can say certain words to build kids up and watch their demeanor and watch how they change. And that's sportsmanship right there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, obviously sportsmanship to me, it starts with respect. And we learn that respect from the adults in our lives. There's no question about it. And that leads to the second point in the article this week was it'd be a positive example of sportsmanship. And that doesn't mean like in a sport, but as far as respect goes, I think we can all be positive role models for our kids. We can be positive role models as coaches, as mentors, as teachers, however we interact with kids and doing it in a positive way. Because, kids we have more influence over our kids' behavior than we like to think. I think that sometimes we think we can't influence our kids and make them feel a certain way. Well, you already have. You have since the day they were born. As a parent, you are always constantly influencing their behaviors. And in more cases than not, it's just in your behavior. Because they're going to mimic what they see day in and day out. And it goes the same for coaches. It goes for the same for teachers. Any adults in our lives, we crave that feedback from them as kids. And we need to make sure that we're giving them the right feedback and we're giving them the right example to look up to, both on the sidelines and at home.
Right.
So
yeah, and I know working in I worked in the field of helping kids that had some emotional problems or emotional difficulties, and one of the things that's really I found interesting is most kids that have troubled behaviors are craving for someone to step in and give them some discipline, guidance, and try and teach them. Most of the kids that have a lot of these emotional issues have never been taught or have never had the opportunity to learn these lessons. And it's really kind of interesting when you work with them and give them this discipline, give them this structure, how much they really, really appreciate it. They may be screaming at you that they don't like it, but you can see their behaviors change and you can see their whole demeanor change. And I agree with you, Steve. I think it's so important that our examples and what we try to do and show them is what they're craving and what they're looking for. And we really don't realize how much they are watching us to see how we react, to see how we act, and to see what we do in all different kinds of scenarios.
Yeah, for sure. And that leads to the final point was to emphasize fun over winning. Again, I watched some football over the past few weeks, and I know you guys see it. I'm sure you see it in all of your programs where you have coaches that just are obsessed with winning at the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade level. and we see them just screaming at kids. And I know that these kids aren't having fun, and that's the hard part. It's hard to watch when you know a kid is not having fun because somebody's constantly in their ear about what they're doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And and I've had a couple of instances over the years with coaches. One coach that I've seen a few times over the years, who I have honestly, I don't think I've ever heard him with any positive comment. It's always corrective, and I understand, this is a person that knows the game very well, no question about it. And he's making the right corrections, but does it in a way that's all he does. All he does is correct what's wrong and tell kids what they're doing wrong and correcting it, but never giving praise when they do things right. And that is a killer. And it makes for a bad experience. And I know kids that don't play that sport anymore because of that experience. And that's really frustrating. Really,
I can give you two good examples. One is back when I was playing at New Orleans, my roommate Joel Hilgenberg, his brother Jay played for the Chicago Bears that were in the Super Bowl. I think that was, what was that, like 80,
85,
86, 85, yeah, something like that. So they're in the Super Bowl. Here they are, great, lots of success, and I would listen to them talk on Sunday nights after the game, and all I could hear Jay talk about was how terrible that the coach said he did, and how upset he was about his play. Well, he was a 9-time All-Pro, went to the Super Bowl, and yet he still had the coach screaming and yelling at him, telling him what a bad player he was. And what I've learned over the years, and this last weekend was a great example, I think, of it, is when you can have a coach that can help you give everything that you possibly have in a game, win, lose, or draw, and you can honestly say, I left everything on the field. And when I heard Coach Chris, obviously, we're Badger fans, and I heard Coach Chris talk about how he felt like that his players left everything they had on the field, and they just came up a little bit short, and there was nothing to hold their heads down about. He had nothing but positive things to say about all the different players and all the effort and everything that they did. And you know what? They lost, but they walked out of Ann Arbor, going against a very good team, giving everything they had, and they walked away after a loss. But I guarantee you they feel good. And what I wanted to get to is I see coaches that teach and coach players in that manner can bring less talent up to the level of great talent and win, whereas the coaches that scream, yell, and do all the negative stuff, if they have great talent, they're going to win. But they're not going to bring up the lower talent or the guys with less ability to greater levels. So they're only going to be as good as their talent. They're not going to be able to rise above and be better than what their talent level is. And I really believe that, the coaches that can motivate guys with positive reinforcement and do it, like you said, Steve, with positive correct. You always have to correct players, obviously, and you always have to correct situations. But if you can do it in a way to make them feel good about it and make them learn and want to do better, you're going to bring lesser talent to a much higher level than you can great talent. And I've seen it at every level. Everywhere I've gone, I've seen it. And you can definitely see the coaches that get that. The problem is it's very difficult to be a coach like that. You have to be someone who can self-evaluate yourself, can self-correct yourself. You got to be someone that can take criticism, can look at, the mistakes you made and change them. And it's hard work. And the great coaches have to spend a lot of energy on that. Whereas, it's actually, I hate to say it, but it's much easier to be one of those scream and yelling coaches. And, and they can blame everyone else but themselves. And I think the good coaches, like, I love, obviously I'm a friend of his, but I love what Paul does and how he, he self-evaluates himself and he takes blame when it's needed. And he just really gets that whole coaching, positive sportsmanship, positive type method of dealing with kids.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, one of the things that I really think should be a stronger emphasis for all coaches, because yes, you have to correct what's happening on the field. There's no question, and I would certainly not. I wouldn't say you just sugarcoat everything. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is you have to be able to point out the things that the kids are doing well, and you have to make a big deal about things that are done well, the things they're doing right. And again, I'll come back to this always. It's one of my favorite sayings, and it's praise loudly and criticize softly. Okay, praise loudly, criticize softly. I just think that especially at the younger levels, you can if you're just screaming what the kids are doing wrong and what they have to change, and that's all you're doing, and you're doing the opposite and saying, yep, good job, that was good, and then screaming what's wrong, you just don't get anywhere with kids. Kids don't react well to that. Adults don't act well to that. So it's just really not effective, and it's one of the things that I really think that coaches need to focus more on is praise and doing it the right way, and you can still correct, and you can still even be a stern disciplinary coach,
right?
And have that positive aspect to what you're doing. And I've seen it, and those are the guys that I think make great coaches. I mean, the best coaches I've ever known are the ones that can get after you, but then they're also going to be just as adamant when you're doing things the right way.
Right.
And that's a big deal. It's very hard to do. There aren't a lot of coaches like that, but that's something you can learn. And I think we can help teach that. I really think we can.
I agree. Hey, what was your saying again? Praise loudly, what?
Criticize softly. Praise loudly, criticize softly. And I think that's it's just something I've thought about that for many years. I don't even remember where I heard it. Something to that effect, and I heard it when I used to coach, it just stuck with me. And I always think about that when I'm correcting kids and when I'm watching kids on a field. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up too, and we mentioned this a little bit, is the question of, can you be aggressive and still display sportsmanship? And we talk about that flipping the switch. And I know, it's something that, sometimes you got to think a little bit nasty. Like, you want to take that person, if you're a lineman, if you're an offensive lineman, I want to drive that person 10 yards back and put them on their back. I want to drive them 10 yards on the field and plant them on their back. That's my goal every time. And I even tell kids, if you need to put that bully or that ex-girlfriend as the face on the guy that you're putting on the back, that's okay, as long as you're doing it the right way. But I think that the tough part there is, I really think the tough part that kids have the most trouble with is, you don't just flip the switch and you leave it on for an entire game. You have to be able to flip it on and off from whistle to whistle, from snap to whistle. And that's why, to me, there is no better feeling, again, than blocking someone down the field and planting them on his back. But there's no more demoralizing feeling than having that happen and then having the guy help you back up. And that's something that I always thought about, was when I put my hand down after I just put that guy on his back on the field, to put my hand down and help him up. And that was my favorite thing I ever had to do in a game. I have to be very honest. Even more so than making the block was putting my hand down and asking the guy, trying to help him back up. Because I knew that guy was just like, oh, crap. This guy he just drove me back and planted me in the ground, and now he just helped me up. You know what I mean? And it's just something about that as a lineman. That's like, those are golden nuggets in a game. Well, and the other thing that's nice too, Steve, when you can learn to flip the switch like that, what I've learned also is, when I'm out in the public or I'm out wherever I'm at, and you get some arrogant or some mouthy or some person and you can sit back and realize that you have the flip shut off, or the switch shut off, and you don't have to be aggressive, and you don't have to lose your cool, and you don't have to beat the guy up or do anything like that. And I think that's one of the things when you talk about that flip or switch being flipped is,
that is something that you've learned over the years in the game of football, is how to turn it on and off. And so, you don't have to go around bullying, beating people up, or getting your way by being physical and aggressive. You can, in the back of your mind, have the confidence to know, if I need to, I know I can take care of this guy if I have to, because I've done it 1,000 times on the football field. So it's a confidence that you can gain in this sport that is unlike many other sports out there, where you can walk around with your head held high, realizing you can handle very stressful, critical situations without having to result to hitting, fighting, things like that, because you can flip that switch.
Yep. And again, I really think it comes down to respect, and we learn that again from the adults in our lives and how they react to situations. And it's something that I think about a lot when I'm around my kids, is how I react to certain things. And certainly I'm not perfect. There's no question I've done things where I've been like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have yelled. I shouldn't have. We all have. We all do.
We all do.
It's part of life. But you know what? I also know that I recognize it. And I feel good about that I can recognize that, because I know there are a lot of people that can't, and
right.
or that refuse to, and I think that's an important thing. So I think that's it, Coach. Is there anything else you wanted to?
Well, one of the things that I kind of wanted to add is there's a lot of, right now, with our political environment, with our religious environment, all these different things, and we had a situation with our team that came up that made me think, that wanted to do this, is as a person, as a football player, as someone who wants to grow in this game and in life, you got to understand, people have their own personal opinions and values and all of that kind of stuff. When you're a team, when you're part of a team and you're doing sportsmanship, you have to allow people to have their viewpoints or their opinions, and you don't need to knock them down about it or go after them, because the team is bigger than the individual, and you want to really focus on, as a good sport and someone who's really being a good, have good sportsmanship. It's more important for the team to do well than you to get your opinion or your way of thinking across to other team members. So my point being is we have so much diversity right now in this country. We have so much different perspectives on all different kinds of things, that I think this is a great opportunity to learn how to handle yourself with people that have a lot of different viewpoints than you do. I think Steve, when you and I grew up, and I mean, I'm older than you, so when I grew up, it was fairly black and white on what everybody was thinking and doing. There wasn't not even close to the amount of diversity that we have in today's society. And I watch my daughters grow up with it. Now I watch all these guys I coach, and there's so many different viewpoints on what is right and wrong and how you handle things. Good sportsmanship is about allowing people to be who they are, but come together as a team and win as a team and grow as a team. And you can do that with lots of different diversity. And I think that's something that needs to be more discussed and worked on as far as sportsmanship goes, because we do live in a society that has so many people from so many different backgrounds.
I couldn't agree. That's very well said, Coach. And again, I think you could say sportsmanship when you're talking about athletes and football and any sport. When you're talking about life, sportsmanship is respect, and having a respect for others' viewpoints, having respect for how other people feel, and that, again, we learn a lot of life lessons in sport, and being part of a team, taught me a lot, coming from a small town, and being thrown into a very diverse group of guys, of understanding what it was, that we're all just people. We're all the same, really. When it comes down to it, doesn't matter what your beliefs are. You're still people, and as long as you respect one another and you respect what you're about, you can have a very tight group of players who have extremely different beliefs.
Exactly.
I mean, opposing butt your head beliefs, but if you have respect for one another, it won't matter. It won't matter. And that's what teamwork and being part of a team taught me, is that it really doesn't matter what their beliefs are, what the color of their skin was, any of those things, what religion they were. It makes no difference, because we're all just people. And if we have respect for one another, then again, it's not going to matter. So, all right, good stuff tonight, Coach. And this is a topic that I know I'm very passionate about. I think about it a lot. I think about it every time I go to a game, a high school game, and I watch kids. I think about it every time my kids are sitting with me watching sports. And those are great teaching moments too. When you're watching a game, you can point out, that's just not something you really want to do. It's not smart. Or look at that. That is something that's awesome in the way that person handled that situation. So I really think it's a passionate topic, and something I like to discuss. So I think this is something we'll touch on in the future, and hopefully with some other guests, and maybe bringing some other coaches in, because I'd love to get more perspective on sportsmanship and how we can handle that, and how we can do good things with this. So, all right, guys,
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching tonight. Thanks, Coach.
Yep. All right, play big.
Yes, for sure. All right, so if you are not a member of our trench training community, make sure you get on, click the big yellow button, and get your free membership. There's some great free content in there. We're going to be adding more as well. So we'd love to see you as a trench training member. Get into our private Facebook group if you're not as a member. So we'll love to see you there. So guys, have a great weekend. I know it's some good games coming up. I'm going to be at a good one tomorrow night, so I can't wait to come see you guys play. And we'll catch you on the next Tuesday in the trenches. All right, guys.
Have a great night, everybody.
Have a good night. Play big.